being calm before a fight is impossible. So the way that I always looked at it was back in the day, I used to hate getting those butterflies. And all I did to change that was I just started leaning into it. And I would start talking about how I can't wait to get the butterflies. Like I can't wait to be nervous. I can't wait to get scared and just embrace it. Like it's gonna come, it's gonna happen.
Welcome to Iron Summit, where we cover topics about health, fitness, and general performance through the eyes of former elite Division I wrestlers. All right, we're live. Today we have an awesome guest. We have Matt Brown. Matt is a friend of mine and just a human I've always looked up to. But Matt is a father, UFC fighter, very recently retired, and just an overall badass in life. In the UFC, Matt is known as being one of the most prolific knockout artists of all time. Matt has the most fights ending early via knockout in welterweight history. And just pleasure to have you on the podcast, Matt.
Thanks. And second most in UFC history, by the way.
Second most in UFC history. I was going to ask you, did I cover it all?
Not to my own horn or anything, but I'll take it.
No, we love it.
It's pretty big. Who's number one?
Derek Lewis.
Derek.
Well, he's a heavyweight.
It doesn't count. He's a heavyweight.
No one likes heavyweights.
No one likes heavyweights, even in wrestling, right? Right, Max?
Yes. I believe on our last podcast, Ryan, you said you think heavyweights are the coolest.
I do think heavyweights are. So, Matt, here's my theory. The nicest guys are heavyweights because they grew up like the big kid, where they're like, their parents are like, don't hurt kids, like just be nice to them. And so they had to like rely on their personality. They couldn't be like rough with all these kids. So they're always the nicest guys.
Fact. It's like dogs, man. You get a king. Oh, he's like the sweetest thing ever.
Yes.
Little chihuahua, and he's a little asshole.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Yeah, I have an English Mastiff, and he is a huge wimp. Like, he will put his tail between his legs when a chihuahua barks at him.
That's always the way it is, man. But and plus the heavyweights, I like it because they know that they can hurt you too.
Yeah.
Like the little guys get good because they're always going with people bigger than them, right? Like you said, you wrestled 138 or when you were in high school. So
yeah,
one with like 160 pounders, 150 pounders, and you got two guys your weight. So
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
You learn how to move and you get twice experience, like Max is only going with like two guys.
It's so true.
I got the balls to go, get manhandled.
Well, at Muscle Farm, like out of all the fighters, Matt, you were like one of the only guys that would actively look at trying to go with me. Everyone was, I don't want to go with Mac. It's way too heavy.
The first time I saw Max there, I'm like, oh my goodness, I didn't know people were that big, dude.
Yeah, I don't know what that says about me, to be honest. Like if that's brave or stupid, but
both.
Well, I think, and we can get into this, but you knew enough about wrestling to understand that like a good wrestler, no matter how big they are, it's probably safer to go with them than like a lot of guys in MMA. It's kind of scary to go with because they don't really know wrestling. So they turn in the wrong direction. They're not as smooth. Catch an elbow to the face in wrestling. It's just not, when the better the wrestler, even if they are big, the safer it is to go with.
And I would definitely say that about you. You were very safe. And like, I knew if I did a technique properly, like a lot of times, like you would let me get it, because I'm doing it properly. But I knew if I didn't do it proper, I'm getting fucked.
I appreciate it.
That's
that's how you train, right? When you're play sparring or play wrestling or whatever you want to call it, that's what you do, right? If you're doing the technique perfect, like I'm not going to muscle my way out of it. I just rarely did really good techniques on you, so facing the mat, which is, use a lot of the things you taught me, actually. We did some one-on-ones and stuff, and man, it was actually really, really good stuff that I still use to this day and passing it on. I remember specifically a technique, I don't know what you'd call it or anything, that you taught me that I just passed on to my son the other day.
That's
Which
awesome.
one is that?
When you're stuck under someone and straighten out your arms, arch your back. I don't know what you
Yep.
call that technique, but I think you probably
I
remember.
still teach that. Yeah.
Finishing the extended.
Right. Yeah, finishing an extended single. That's a huge mistake people make is they try and like go all arms when they get extended. And arms are not as strong as legs.
That's
Um,
that's that's so sweet though that you're still using it. Matt, I think something cool
that's
about you
awesome.
too is you seem like you were somebody that was always seeking out new people. Like you had the courage to wrestle with other people. I know it meant a lot to me in high school. Like I'm some high school kid coming to these, muscle farm practices and like you were willing to wrestle with me and stuff. So it was I don't know, it was cool. It felt like you wrestled with everybody. You were looking for new I think a lot of guys in the MMA space, like, sometimes they kinda have their crew and then they don't kinda train with other
Hmm.
guys. You were, like, from what I saw, was willing to train with everybody, and I think that's a testament to, like, your ability to just drop your ego at the door and get better.
Yeah.
Totally,
Well, you walk in. I want to add to that, Matt. You walk into an MMA. Like I hadn't gone with MMA guys. I know wrestlers, but like you expect MMA guys to have pretty big balls. And the truth is, when you get in an MMA practice, not all of them have big balls, but Matt had huge balls. He would go with anyone, no questions asked, anytime. Just, yep, let's do
I
it.
think it was all just my mindset of I'm here to get better. I'm not here to win. And if I'm not going against guys that are beating me, then I'm in the wrong spot, right? And I
Yeah.
still do that today. Even if I'm going with like newer guys that I know that I can beat them, like I'm going to put myself in a bad position. It's like, what are you doing? Like, you're not getting paid to be in that room.
Yeah.
That's not where the glory comes from. Um, I want to get my hand raised. That's the only thing I'm looking for. I want a million people to see me with my hand raised, not, one person, like ruin his day because I beat him or something. And
Yeah.
that's one of the issues that I find with MMA fighters, which, I mean, you gotta be a little crazy to be an MMA fighter. You gotta have some shit wrong with you, but one of the issues I see constantly is, just the egos, man. These guys just don't wanna put themselves out there, and they look at training very different. I think the wrestlers, that I've wrestled with, like, they're always willing to put themselves out there, and they wanna test themselves every day, and that's the way I look at training. It's like, this is a challenge today, and I wanna you know, I don't go into a practice planning on winning that practice. I go in, finding how I can lose today.
Yeah, that's
That's
huge.
awesome.
That's so great too, like you said, I think it's tough. It doesn't come naturally to people to be able to just, like I mean, it's easy to say like, yeah, you want to get better, but then, guys tighten up at practice and just do the stuff they're good at because it makes them feel good. So being able to like actually do that, I think is huge. And, obviously worked out really well for you. How did you get into, fighting and what made you kind of start that trajectory?
It's kind of a long story, but I'll try to make it short as I can or sum it up as quick best as I can. Um, so I grew up in a really small town, uh, population of 200, right? So, I never got around anything, like UFC or anything like that. I never heard of it. It was a very, uh, um, far off thing, right? Like people in big cities and stuff heard that. I wasn't able to wrestle much. Like, it was just a very small farm town, everything, but we fought all the time. That's what we did. There was it's very funny, man, not to get off track, but, I asked my kids the other day, they're in seventh grade. And I said, you guys haven't really told me about no fights at your school. And they're like, well, Dad, I've never seen a fight at my school, and they looked at me like I was weird. And they're in seventh grade. I was like, by seventh grade, we were meeting behind the church parking lot like weekly,
Yeah.
I was that guy, but so it's interesting how that culture's changed, but that's how we grew up. It was a it was a constant battle for a hierarchy. Like I got bullied and then I bullied others. That was the game that we played, right? If you were the bigger kid, if you could beat a kid up, like you're taking his fucking lunch money, and if a kid can beat you up, he's taking your fucking lunch money. So you better find someone you can take their lunch money to get yours back, right? But that was just a game we played. So I'd say that's kind of how I started getting into fighting, because I was just like a natural thing, for the way that I grew up in a farm town. But I was introduced to actual cage fighting, um, when one of my friends was going to a fight. I was at a Moose Lodge here in Chillicothe, Ohio, and he was supposed to be fighting that night. He was supposed to be fighting Wes Sims, who was UFC heavyweight. A lot of you guys probably heard of. Some of you might not have. Um, and so he brings me, this is when I was partying. I was drinking all the time, and I was at that fight, and it was like you'd see in the movies where this guy smoking cigars, betting on the fights. Um, anybody could fight. So I show up and we're partying, we're doing cocaine and, we're fired up, right? Very excited to watch our boy. And they announce on the microphone, if anybody wants to fight the champion, you fucking stand up and tell us whatever. And I just got out of the bathroom doing a line and I come out, I was like, I'll fight that motherfucker. Let's go. So I literally went across the street, bought a mouthpiece. There was like a sporting goods store there. And then there was a restaurant over there. So I used their microwave to boil the mouthpiece, come back, paid $30. And I was fighting an hour later and I won the fight. And then we got back home. And then I started watching UFC because I hadn't even seen UFC at that point. I didn't even know really what that was. So I started studying a little bit. I remember buying a Ken Shamrock DVD on how to, do leg locks or whatever kind of stupid shit he was teaching. Uh, so anyway, so I actually did that a couple different times. Like all of my friends were kind of going to these, backyard fights where you go to like fairgrounds or whatever. So I would just go sign up and fight. And then one time I did it, and then I finally got my ass kicked. I really got my ass kicked by this guy who was going pro as a boxer in his next fight. And I don't know how I got matched up with him, but I did. But I was talking to him after, and he was like, "Man, he's like, you're tough as fuck, bro. Like I couldn't knock you out." He's like, "I knock out everybody and this and that." Um, but then I recognized what it was at that point. That was the first time I fought someone where I would throw punches. I would do shoot shots. Do anything I could, and I just could not touch this fucking kid. Right. So I realized what it was, and it was that day I decided, man, I'm gonna change my life. I'm gonna pursue this. This is what I want to do with my life. Um, and so I used that as a catalyst to get me away from the drugs and alcohol. I said, I got to change my life if I do want to pursue this. And so I moved to Columbus, Ohio. My brothers lived here, so I moved in with them. I went to a real gym. I was fortunate that there were some really good people at the gym. So there was a couple of really high level pros that were almost to the UFC who were training for really high level professional fights. And then I really got my ass kicked. Like I thought I got my ass kicked before in the cage, but now I'm with these pros who are kicking my ass basically however they want, right? They're doing jujitsu on me.
How old were you at this point?
23, maybe the 24 actually. I was 24. Yeah. And like I said,
And how old were you when you did that? Like you stepped in that
I was
cage?
22.
22. So this is so this is happening pretty quick.
Yeah. Yeah. So it took about 2 years for me to finally realize I needed to check out an actual gym. Right. Because like I said, I kept winning, like I was going to these podunk shows in the middle of nowhere and kicking these guys' asses, I don't know how the fuck I did it, but I did it. Right.
It's tough.
But I'll tell you what, man, when I got in that real gym, and one of the guys I met my first day is still my coach today, Dorian Price. I think you guys might have met him at a muscle farm. He came out there with me a couple times. He's still one of my best friends and coaches to this day. And with that said, when I got in there and I felt the cardio that these guys had, the strength that these guys had, the technique, which was ridiculous technique, they're doing. And when you're sparring, you can also you can keep coming back, right? When you're in a fight, right? I lost and then I didn't get another chance. And in the back of your head, you're like, I should have just done this and I would have won. But with this, it's like, okay, I should have done this and I wouldn't have got submitted. And then you go do it again and he submits you again, right? So then I started realizing like, okay, I actually suck at this. But walking out of the gym that day, that's when I devoted my life to the martial arts. I said, there's nothing else I want to do and I'm going to succeed at this or I'm going to die trying. So I talk about this a lot with people who are going through recovery or going through hard times, maybe addicted to something. I don't have the disease, so it just doesn't necessarily relate to everyone. I'm not an alcoholic. But what I tell them, like the way that I stopped, and I stopped on that day, was I just changed my identity. I woke up every day and instead of saying, I want to go party or do this, I said, what would a warrior do today? And a warrior would go for a run. A warrior would go lift some weights. A warrior would go to the gym and, kick somebody's ass, go kick the bag, whatever. And that's the way I just started doing it. I just stopped drinking, stopped hanging out with those type of people. stopped doing cocaine, meth, all the shit that I was doing, and never looked back, man.
That's so cool. So along somewhere in that couple of years when you're finding your identity as a warrior, um, you overdosed, right? And that's why you got the name Immortal. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Sort of. So that happened actually before that. I was 21 at the time. That was before I ever fought, and um, so the name kind of came from that. So the actual nickname, I'll go kind of in reverse order here. The nickname actually came because it was tattooed on my stomach. Right? I actually want the nickname because it was tattooed on my stomach. I was like, that's cheesy as fuck, bro. It's tattooed on my stomach. But all the voters just started calling me the Immortal, and people kind of in the local scene, they just didn't even know my real name. They just thought I was the Immortal because that was tattooed on my stomach, and that's what people called me. But the reason I got tattooed on my stomach partially had to do with the overdose. I was so the whole story goes like this. I was basically at a party and I had a lot of brushes with death around that age, just doing ridiculously stupid things. Um, overdose was just one of those things. But coincidentally, when I did overdose, one of my friends at the time, it just made a passing joke saying that I was immortal. And they probably thought nothing of it. I don't think they even remember saying it. They probably forgot about it 10 seconds later, but it stuck with me. I was like, yeah, I am fucking immortal. And then when I got it tattooed on my stomach, I used that as a reminder to myself every morning when I look in the mirror that you are fucking immortal, bro. Like you've already been through that shit and you can go through anything else. Nothing can stop you. They can bury you 6 feet in the ground. You're going to get the fuck up out of there.
So when that actually happened and you overdosed, was that like the next day, like change your life, or how do you deal with coming back from
Yeah,
that? Because that's a
I was
pretty
gonna say
major event.
I wish it was.
you overdosed and died and were resuscitated, and that didn't spur you to change your life. But then getting your ass kicked by professional fighters, that's what
That's
that's
exactly.
what
Shit. I wish it would. I wish it would have done that. And in retrospect, I mean, how selfish of it was me that I didn't respect, what that would have done to others. But I just didn't put that kind of value on my life at that time. Didn't have that kind of self esteem. Um, so I still remember walking somewhere. It wasn't my home because I wasn't living at any home at that time, but walking somewhere when I left the hospital and thinking to myself, okay, well, I'm not doing heroin anymore, but we could go, drink. That's not going to do that to you, right? Or I could do some cocaine. That's not going to do it to you, right? Which is again just like how fucking dumb I was.
Do you remember, like, seeing anything? You talk to people that have, like, near-death experiences that they're like, I had the craziest, like, dream, or I saw something." You don't.
I didn't have none of that stuff.
Okay.
I basically blacked out. The one of the last things I remember is I was fortunate. I was when I had taken the heroin, I was at a friend's house who was a nurse, and I was just fortunate. I remember her taking my blood pressure, and then I remember walking outside, and that was one of the last things I remember.
Wow.
And I remember when I woke up because they give you a Narcan. It's not a resuscitation; they give you Narcan. Um, I think they had something different back then because it was like 20 years ago. I don't think it was actually
Mhm.
Narcan, but whatever it was, like it made you. It put you in a lot of pain. I remember waking up, just everything in my body hurting like hell, and saying like, "What am I doing here?" So
Yeah. Wow. That's crazy.
crazy. So it took, that didn't do it, but choosing to be a warrior did.
yeah. Well, what choosing to be a warrior did was it opened my eyes. Like because what my mind was just in such a like I started drinking and doing all the drugs and everything from I've thought a lot about this. Um, pretty deeply. And, what it was I was just growing up in this small town. I was kind of a prodigal son. My dad was a machinist and he owned his own machine shop. All my family owned their own businesses. And I was meant to take over this machine shop. Like I said, I was a prodigal son. Everything came really easy to me. I had huge projections. I only played sports up until my freshman year, but I was a great athlete. Like I was doing really well in everything that I tried. School was uber easy to me. I went to a vocational school, took machining, and I was like bored as hell. I was teaching the teacher because I was doing the stuff that they're trying to teach us. I was doing that when I was like 12 years old, running mills and lathes and CNC machines and things like this. Um, so like all this stuff came really easy to me, but all that I seen in my life was being stuck in this small town. And it was very, it brought a lot of resentment and anger into me. And the only thing that I knew to do was to go hang out with the guys that are angry and resentful and to living bitter lives. And when you hang out with those people, that's what you get. And again, just very naive and selfish, not recognizing what I'm doing to my family and the people that care about me around me. Um, and it just led to worse and worse. And in retrospect, obviously I can look back now and say, damn, I'm lucky. And, um, you know, I apologize to my mom all the time, happy Mother's Day again, mom. But yeah, that's, she's happy with everything I've done now, obviously. So
That's really cool too. Like that's such a strong psychological thing of when you decided like, I don't know, your mantra, like what would a warrior do? And you changed your identity and then you identified as something else and you change your environment. Um, I don't know. I've read a lot of things talking about that's the best way to change your habits, right? And so for you to like recognize that and implement that is such a cool thing, and find that out on your own, even though there's like all this science to back that up. I think that's really cool. And then you talk about MMA too. What exactly did your training look like with that? Because there's so many different martial arts, right? So how do you, as an early fighter who's kind of came from, you didn't understand what you're doing, you got thrown in this professional world. How do you decide where to allocate your time? Because you only have so much time in a day. Your body can only hold up so much. And you got to be proficient in, 15 different areas. How do you decide what you're doing and what did your training look like and how have you structured that over the years?
That's a very big question, right? So it's obviously evolved by worlds since I first started. When I first started, obviously I'm a young kid with a lot of energy. I basically just trained all day, every day. To me, that was my job. And if I wasn't training, 6 to 8 hours a day, I wasn't doing enough. And I was actually fortunate. I started learning about Dan Gable pretty early on, actually. I don't remember how, maybe a book or something, but he was actually a gigantic inspiration to me. And he would talk about crawling off the mats, So to me, it was like, if I'm not crawling off the mats, then I'm not training. That means I didn't put in enough time. Um, so there was basically, I would do whatever training I possibly could every day when I started. I would go to a gym. I would take every class they had, and I would stay past the end of every class. They'd be kicking me out of the gym every night. Um, if I was sitting at home and didn't have a ride to the gym or a way to get there, I'm going and doing sprints until I can't walk anymore. Um, and that was just the only training I knew. I didn't have any coaches or anything, so I just literally pushed myself to the brink of my mental and physical limits every single day of the week, 7 days a week. I know a lot of people talk about that. You shouldn't train 7 days a week. And I'm like, I think you got to go through that personally. I think you got to go through, kind of what you guys, I'm sure, went through early in college career, right? Where it's just mentally exhausting until the breaking point. And I think that's important for everybody to go through at some point. You got to know where that limit is, so you know where to hold back and where to get to. But over the
Yeah.
years, I mean, obviously it evolved a shit ton. Um, and I would say what it's evolved into in the past few years, which has served me very well, is still a lot of hours, lots of high volume, but very light work. And that has served me better than anything. Put the hard work, almost like Russian style, right? Like put the hard work in on the weights and the sprints and the kettlebells and things like that. But with your partners, like protect yourself, protect them, and have so much fun that you just want to be in there every day. And
That's
there's been through a
go
lot of
ahead.
phases in between that, right? Like we trained a certain way at Muscle Farm, right? I trained at a lot of different gyms and trained a lot of different ways, just like I'm sure you guys been to different college camps and wrestling rooms where everybody trains a little bit different. So there's been a lot of evolutions, but that's been my way for a long time now, where I'll do 1 hour sparring rounds. Like I've never seen, like you never seen a Muscle Farmer guy doing a 1 hour round, right? It's like 3 5 minute rounds, hard as you can fucking go. And I'm like, I'm too old for that shit, man. Like I know how
Yeah.
well I can fight, but how am I getting my skills better every day?
I kind of love that
Well,
point too, where you say, like you almost need the overtraining. Cause I think everybody, I don't know if you feel this way, Max, but it was like in high school, it was like this healthy amount of overtraining where I look back and I'm like, what we were doing was probably stupid and early on in college too. And then, by junior year, one of my coaches who I respected a lot and was like, just an awesome wrestler. He's like, "Hey man, you're not 18 anymore. You need to take an off day. You need to be smarter about your body now." And so I think, like you're saying, you have different phases of like you build your capacity, you know where your limits are, and then you got to be smart about your training too.
well, and I think to Matt's point, you learn your limits. Like, if you've never pushed yourself that hard, then how do you know when you're actually getting to that point? You don't. And a lot of people think they're going really hard and they're not.
Mhm.
So like I do think, and even though from, like truly from a scientific training perspective, it's not the best thing to do, but you got to know it. And I think that, a lot of the best college programs are figuring out that it's like this in wrestling, at least, like it's a balance of both. You push really hard, but then you also recover.
Mhm.
And that's where you can become an absolute weapon. I am curious, Matt. I think, it's like that your toughness and that ability to do whatever it took probably helped because most people, like you started fighting besides like, messing around in parking lots when you're 21, 22 years old. At that point, most fighters have a base and at least one discipline for, since childhood. Wrestlers start when they're 4 or 5 years old. Jiu-jitsu guys, around that age. Boxers, similar thing. Kickboxing kids are starting earlier and earlier. So for you, you had to like catch up
Yep.
to a lot of these guys who had a base, for a long time.
I had to catch up and I'd done a lot of damage to my body that was adverse damage, like
Yeah.
you know,
You weren't being an athlete, you were being an asshole until that point.
exactly, yeah, yeah. I mean, you guys do a lot of damage in college wrestling, but it makes you better. So, like, the amount of good stuff you did before you got that damage, it
Yeah.
balances out, right? And, to your point a minute ago, I mean, I would say the one word I hate more than any other word is overtraining. I absolutely despise that word because, like, until you're, like, you've trained so much that you're, like, sick or, truly injured because of your amount of training, like, you're not overtraining. Like overtraining to me is like Hell Week in buds,
Yeah.
where you're sleeping an hour a night and, but even
Yeah.
it's like humans can do that, but you're gonna sit here and tell me your fucking 2-hour session of lifting weights is overtraining. Like, get the fuck out of here, bro. I get so sick of hearing that word, like, "I don't wanna overtrain," and
Yeah.
it's just a cop out is all it is, man. That's what it's just a constant cop out. And now I do think when you get to a certain level, right, there's an optimal training, but to build yourself up to that level, there's no such thing as overtraining. Now,
Yeah.
but again, once, if you're peaking for the national finals or even, a standard wrestling season or particularly, Olympics and things like that. When you get to that level, okay, now there's an optimal amount of training because you built the skill set, but you can't overtrain when you're, a fucking high school kid,
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
because,
Well, especially when it comes to building a skill set.
fuck
If
yeah.
you can, yeah.
These guys, they talk about like, well, overtraining is like not enough sleep. You know why they're not sleeping? Because they didn't train hard enough. Right? If you
Yeah.
train hard enough, do you sleep or not?
Yeah,
Like,
you'll be tired.
Oh yeah.
you don't have a choice. You're like, "Dude, I cannot train. I cannot do anything. I don't feel like watching TV. My brain is fried. My body's fried. I'm going into bed. Leave me alone." And guys, I think guys are afraid to go through that. That's what they're afraid of. They don't wanna push their body that hard. They wanna save a little bit so they can come hang out with their girlfriend or so they can, call their mom and, have a great dinner or, whatever it is. They can socialize with their buddies and have a beer. And then they go, drinking with their buddies on the weekend. They're like, "Oh, I'm overtrained because I got injured." It's like, well, you're got a hangover, buddy. That's what it is. You're not overtrained.
How do you lean into that? Because I think, one of the like, it's human nature. People lean away from the suck and when it gets really hard, and you walk right in the face of that. So how did you train your mind to do that? Because I mean, is that natural or did you learn to do that? Because that's such a tough skill. I mean, I coach college wrestling now and, recruiting kids, one of the biggest things you look for is a kid that's tough, man, because you can't teach certain things. And those kids that just keep going no matter what, even when they drop matches, even when stuff's not going their way, you can't teach that heart. We can teach you how to wrestle, but you can't teach a kid to not stop fighting.
I don't think it was natural at all to me. I think I was born a pussy. I think that the only I think most of us are, and how I define toughness, um, or perseverance or fortitude and all that things, the only thing that the only thing that defines it is who makes a choice and stands on that choice, right? I talk about this when we go run the stairs out here all the time, and sometimes, that most people, like the average person, will go do like 10 stair sprints, right? Very high level athlete do like 15. It's, very difficult stair sprints. And I'll go out there sometimes and be like, okay, we're doing 20. We're doing 25. Like we're doing an insane amount that your body probably can't even do. Like you're going to break down at some point. But are you able to make the choice that you're getting to the top? And if you make that choice and hang to that choice or hang on that choice, that you will do it. But people, they choose the easier route than the harder route, which is natural in our bodies, I think in our minds, right? The evolution, right? Right. As cavemen or whatever that, some woman fucked up our minds and we chose the easier route. Berries, don't go hunt the bear. Right?
Some good.
You
Oh man, there's
I
some
think
good quotes in here.
there's definitely like some evolutionary stuff there. But when you look at those toughest kids in your room, what do you see? You see them making the choice to do more when they have a choice not to.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, and being
Yeah.
able to shut off your brain in that moment, right? Which is something you gotta learn to do. And it seems like from your early days of just, like, training for hours and hours, you learned how to, like, be uncomfortable in that moment and just continue to keep going.
yeah,
Well, yeah.
that might be exactly it. It's again, I just define it as a choice.
Yeah.
Like I chose that this was the path I'm going down. When I go run the stairs, I choose 20, and I'm doing 20 if I die out here. And I think a lot of
Yeah,
people,
it's more about the mental aspect of it than the physical aspect of it. The physical pain from running those stairs is not a tool to like get your legs stronger. It's a tool to get your mind stronger.
well, I guess I think a lot of people would prefer the ease or the comfort of quitting than the discomfort of dying, right?
Yeah.
I think a lot of us, I think you guys included, we would rather die before we quit. Like we're gonna go until we die. Like we're horses, right? We're race horses, We're like if you whip or you crack that whip, like I'm gonna keep running. And if you take me over
Yep.
the cliff, I'm going over the cliff. Like we're in this until the death. And that's just the way my mentality's been, and I think that's what served me well. And again, so I take it all back to just a choice, and I make the choice before I step on the mats. Like I'm here till the death.
Yeah. No, absolutely. That's awesome. I think it's such a huge aspect of combat sports. And when you got into MMA and you have all these different disciplines, how did you decide like this is what I want to be good at? And how did you change how much time did you put in everything? Because I mean, recently we see a lot of guys in the UFC that are wrestlers, and obviously we're a little wrestling biased. But you can't just be a wrestler, right? You got to know how to strike. You got to know, you got to know jujitsu. You got to know kickboxing. How did you decide that, and what have you seen that's worked well for you? Because I think one of the coolest things with your sport is, matchups are so different. It doesn't matter who it is. Like you might kick the crap out of somebody that can't beat this guy, but you can beat this. It's matchups and how your skill sets line up, and you got to account for a lot of different skill sets.
Well, I'd say first and foremost, like I've made probably every single mistake that you could possibly make in the sport, and
Okay.
that's why I'm happy to speak on these types of things where I think I'm speaking of a place of authority. Where so when and the reason I say is okay when you talk about what should you be training, to become great at this sport. My mind has changed a lot on this from the beginning. Uh, um, so I started off mainly doing Muay Thai. Um, because it was easy for me. That's where all of my natural abilities shined, right? I did my first Muay Thai match, like pure Muay Thai match, not pure because I wasn't in Thailand, or whatever, but real Muay Thai match,
Yeah.
2 weeks after I stepped in that gym. Right, I think it was like the
Wow.
second or third day, the gym I was just telling you about, where I stepped in there and met Dorian. One of the guys, he's like, "Hey man, there's a Muay Thai match in 2 weeks. You want to go do it?" I was like, "Fuck yeah, let's go." But I did well, like because and Muay Thai is not like MMA fighting. Like I did well in MMA fighting before that, but it's there's a lot of like scrappiness involved stuff. Like Muay Thai is a very pure, technical art, and I did well because my body is very natural for that. Um, Wrestling and jujitsu, I don't have any natural inclination towards that. It's very, very difficult for me. Um, so for the longest time, I started by just doing lots of Muay Thai because that's what I was good at. And then I started, um, getting fucked up a lot in submissions and wrestling and stuff. So I was like, okay. So then I focused like too much on that. And then my Muay Thai started going away. Um, but now, you know, all that to be said, at this point, what my belief is, if you want to succeed in MMA, you have to have a base in something. Like you can't take. I wouldn't succeed in today's UFC, starting at 24 years old with no base in anything. I mean, maybe to some extent, right? But I'm not. Wouldn't be getting to the top 10 like I did before. You have to have a very strong base. You have to have an X factor that when the fight hits this spot, it is your fight. So I always tell them, with that base, that's why wrestling is one of the best bases. If a wrestler comes in, say, okay, you have to get good enough at the other things that you can complement your strong point, your wrestling, or, if you're a striker, get good enough at other things to complement that. So, depending on where their level is at, they might have to take a few months or maybe even a year, whatever, and just focus on one aspect of the sport and get it up to pace with the other parts. And then once you actually start getting it good, then you can do each one, like 2 times a week or something. And then you
Yeah.
just balance it out. So that's a pretty long answer, but
No,
that's
I like it.
I
I appreciate that because it's like you got to lean into your strengths, obviously, but you got to account for your weaknesses at the same time because you can't just lose in this position. I think the one interesting thing too for you is, I mean, you're fighting different guys, and sometimes it was super short notice, but usually you have a training camp where you can kind of account for these weaknesses and try to, defend what you need to defend while leaning into your strengths. Um, so I think that's super interesting. The one thing I want to pick your brain on that I'm super curious to hear about is, a wrestling match. It's like you go out there and you lose. It's like, okay, cool. Maybe you got embarrassed. You walk out, your head down a little bit, but you get locked
I
in a
don't think
cage.
you handled losing like that, Ryan.
I'm just saying, like the worst thing that can happen to you is you get pinned or tacked, and you're a little
Yeah,
embarrassed.
you got your manhood gotten, yeah,
Right.
but you're not getting punched in the face.
You're literally getting locked in a cage, and it's like you could die in there. How do you mentally prepare for that? And what's it like when you're walking out to the octagon?
mean,
How are you keeping calm and getting your mind ready to fight? Because I'm sure there's a lot of nerves there, but then you're channeling those nerves to like, I got to get this job done.
Yeah.
um, so again, that's evolved over the years. So I could tell you where it's ended today, even though I just retired. Um, well, I don't even like using the word retire. Stop fighting. I don't have 10 mil in the bank, so I didn't retire. I'm not golfing. I'm not going golfing in Florida for the rest of my life, right? But I switched jobs.
Yeah, you retired from fighting
Yeah,
in the cage.
basically, yeah.
Yeah.
Where it kind of is, so I read a lot of like stoicism. A lot of people don't know I'm a little bit of a nerd with that kind of stuff, and that helped me a lot with that. And where I kind of ended was like, by the time I get into the fight week, or particularly in the arena that night or the day, um, I've learned to be very accepting, and I think it's served me well in life too. Like I'm very, very accepting of what is. Whatever is going to happen, and I'm happy with it. The sun's going to come up tomorrow. You know, I'm still going to hug my kids. Those that love me aren't going to love me any less. And just that acceptance is what it's all about. And that's served me very well. Now being calm before a fight is impossible. So the way that I always looked at it was back in the day, I used to hate getting those butterflies. And all I did to change that was I just started leaning into it. And I would start talking about how I can't wait to get the butterflies. Like I can't wait to be nervous. I can't wait to get scared and just embrace it. Like it's gonna come, it's gonna happen. And the one thing that I learned is how to reframe things too.
Yeah.
For example, cutting weight. Like I stopped calling that cutting weight and I started calling it shedding skin. Like I'm just shedding who I am today and I'm becoming a new person tomorrow. So the way I would reframe getting nervous is my stomach is just telling me how much I care. Because that's why you get nervous, right? It's because you care. Like you're not afraid of getting hurt. You're not afraid of getting knocked out. You're not afraid of getting embarrassed, most likely. Like it's because you care, because you put a lot of fucking work into this. You put your life into it and you care. So just recognizing that and facing it head on served me very well.
That's so I have a kind of a follow-up question to that mindset. And I think it's something, and maybe you don't know the answer because you're so good at doing it, you just do it. But like someone can tell themselves something like, I love those butterflies, but then when those butterflies actually hit, like, do you actually love them? Like, how do you go from like telling yourself something? Because I do believe that's the first step in changing your thought process. You can apply this to any aspect of life, but how do you go from just telling yourself something like I'm going to eat the healthy food if you're trying to lose weight, or I'm to like actually believing what you're telling yourself and then having it actually happen?
I think a lot of that comes with just experience, right? Because your subconscious brain doesn't believe anything that you say until it's seen evidence of you actually doing it, right? So I think a lot of that comes from, there's many times I would bet when I wrestled with you, Max, I bet I got nervous, you know, like I'm probably nervous. Like this dude is freaking jacked, man. He's gigantic. Like I don't have a chance, but I'm still going to go do it. So I had taught my brain to accept that already, in
So it's telling yourself it and then getting repetitions in to
that's
where you start to believe it.
repetitions, man. And I learned that about confidence, is really where that came from. A lot of people talk about confidence and a lot of people think that I was like one of the most confident fighters, right? Because they watch me and I have that image where I don't know, maybe I got a face or something that just looks like I'm confident. But there's a lot of times like I was not confident at all. Um, so I really started to dissect, okay, how do I become more confident? And what I recognize, and this goes right back to being tough and making a choice. What I recognize, like you gain confidence from evidence, right?
Yeah.
Piles of evidence that you're going to do what you say you're going to do. So if you go on the you go on the treadmill and you say, I'm going to do 45 minutes at 7 miles an hour, but you stop at 40 minutes, you might justify that to yourself. Like, dude, I got in a hell of a workout. Like I burned this many calories and blah, blah, blah. But your subconscious is like, you're a liar, bro. So when you step in that cage and you're sitting there telling yourself, I'm going to win, I'm going to do great, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, your subconscious, your lizard brain is like, bro, you're a liar. We don't believe you right now. But if you have that internal integrity where you do what you say you're going to do, then you basically trick your subconscious into saying, I trust you.
Yeah.
Yep.
I
And
like
that
that.
applies to leaning into the butterflies. Like you tell yourself you're going to lean into the butterflies, you got to actually do it when it gets there. You tell yourself you're going to accept a loss,
Mhm.
you got to actually do, like it applies to everything you do, not just like training
And I would add to
it
that
applies
too.
to the negatives.
I would add to that the accepting that that's where the acceptance part comes in. You got to accept it. Look, it's not going to go right for you that night. I think because I'm a very methodical, systematic person and I think a lot, I would kind of have everything planned out, have a routine, right? And then I would expect a certain outcome from that routine. And then you get, the fight night, like you said, you might practice, those butterflies a million times and you get there and all of a sudden your brain's like, dude, what the hell? This ain't what I thought the butterflies were going to feel like. but learning to accept that, look, it's not going to go the way you want it to go, right? It's not going to be perfect, and being okay with that. Like that,
Yeah.
like you always put a comma at the end, and that's okay, right? It's not going to go perfect, comma, and that's okay, and you just accept it.
I like that a lot. I think we were just talking, last podcast too, kind of same thing you were saying. Another high level wrestler we had that was talking about, just stacking the evidence in your head, and that's where your true confidence comes from. And I think over preparing makes you that much more confident in the ring because there's guys that act it, but they know in their head if they really put the work in. So when you put that work in and you keep stacking this evidence, you can step out there and actually walk the walk instead of just talk the talk.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
You know
Well,
where I've come up with that first from was, man, it's really tough with the MMA because the whole culture. I mean, Max, we seen it at Muscle Farm all the time where, you know, they would do like these spar things and they're just going to try to put the baddest dude against you, right? Like we got to toughen you up and get you ready for the fight. But if you go to like old school boxing camps, if you even hurt the star, right, the guy getting ready for the fight, they're kicking you out of camp, right? Because they want to build that evidence and to build that confidence for the guy. And it's like exactly the opposite in MMA. And that's a lot of why I said, I do a lot of play spar now because, I can build a lot of that confidence just in playing.
we used to call them
yep.
technique
Well,
days. Like you need to.
technique things.
No, but seriously, like, I
Yeah.
think in wrestling, it's easy to be like, hey, I need to wrestle with the best guy every single day. And that's important. You need those days. But then you got days where you wrestle somebody that you can torch, but you got to try, 5 new moves or whatever.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I like that a lot. You
No, it makes sense.
got to range
Or
it.
if you go with that
I think,
guy and you guys just play,
Yeah.
yeah, confidence is not a trait. It's not something it's a skill
Mhm.
that you build and earn.
Fact. And that's what, when we talk about all these, what people consider to be soft skills, trying to, I've thought about all this stuff like probably way more than I ever should have, right? And I have notes for days and days on all this stuff about how do I turn these soft skills into hard skills? Because I think the whole concept of soft skills might be a misnomer, right? That might not be a true thing. There may not be an actual soft skill on this planet. Maybe I'm wrong, but I think that at least the vast majority of them, if not all of them, can be kind of diced up
Built.
into pieces and separated and, peeling the layers back, and you can dig deep and you can start building those tiny little skills that build into those larger ones.
I totally agree. Yeah. I mean, this is getting very philosophical, but if you start believing that you can't build those skills or, like even like personality traits, confidence, those just loving yourself. Like if you can't do that, then what's the point? Right? You gotta believe you can.
No, I think that's a great point because that's where, I've been obsessed with business for the last few years, right? And so, and I know you've done business stuff for a long time, Max, and I don't know about you, Ryan, but probably. And it's one of those things like everything that you do looks so easy on the outside, and then as you dig in, there's just so many little layers. And the reason I bring up business because it really is simple, right? You have a product, you market it, and then you sell it. But how far can you know, dissect each of those little pieces? That's why guys charge $10,000, $20,000 for a fucking business seminar, right? Because it
Yeah.
gets
Yeah.
that deep, and it's the same with fighting. We can take like, I'm trying to remember this, um, quote that I heard where it was like each technique is like skimming the water, but it's also, you can take that technique and you can look in the abyss. You know, each time, like even just a single leg, right? Like you could practice a single leg for the rest of your life and never have a perfect single leg. So
Yep.
yeah, so that's why that's why we love this stuff, right?
You can
Yep.
never master it. That's the coolest part.
Well,
Never. And I think
that's
another quote I love because you
that's
said it's simple, but just because something's simple doesn't mean it's easy.
fact. Yeah, that's a perfect one. Yeah, I love that.
So, can you take us through your nutrition? Like, obviously, your nutrition changed a lot, and as you get older, I'm sure stuff changes in terms of making your body feel good, getting inflammation out, stuff like that. How'd you think about nutrition when you were fighting, and did you do a deep dive in that, or what?
Oh yeah.
How'd you learn about that? Tell us. Yeah,
So that's an interesting one because that's one of them. Um, you ever heard of the Dunning-Kruger effect?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Well,
I love that.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Well, the nutrition, I had Dunning-Kruger effect like a son of a bitch on that. So
Yeah.
I've been a deep dive into nutrition for many, many years. And yet again, I made every single mistake that you ever could because I thought that I knew everything about it. And after going back full circle, it's come back to the same full circle I think every master ends up getting. And it's actually uber, uber simple. Yeah. I eat chicken and protein. I mean, I'm sorry, rice and protein for almost every meal with a vegetable.
I
Love it.
love that. That's like, you ever seen that graph? That's like you like start learning about something, so think you're an
Yeah, that's
expert.
the Dunning-Kruger. That
Oh,
is
that's what
the
okay,
curve. That
that's the
is
same thing?
Yeah. The bell curve.
Okay,
yeah, that's
okay,
it.
okay, yeah.
So it's like you think you know the most about something when you know like 10% about
Yeah.
something.
Oh, I didn't think that was Dunning-Kruger. Yeah, no, that's
Yeah,
awesome.
that's
I love that.
Dunning-Kruger.
Okay.
Exactly. Yeah, but rice and protein with the vegetable.
Dude, it's that simple. A lot of water, um, again, and that's one of those things you can take it kind of as far as you want too, like but look, like it's just macros, right? Like rice is one of the cleanest carbs, does everything that we need it to do for carbohydrates.
Yeah.
The protein, obviously you can make a few different choices. Like, if you're getting a brisket, you're going to get a lot more fat that's unnecessary. If you're getting chicken or some egg whites, you're going to have a better protein and, eat a damn vegetable for once.
Yeah. Get your fiber.
Yeah,
Get a little greens in there.
I snack on fruit, and, I take my supplements and stuff, but, honestly, I think like the supplements, like the vitamins and minerals, I think they're probably one of the most overrated things that there is,
Yeah,
you know,
certainly secondary. And if you're eating a good diet comprised of what you just said, you're getting like 0.5% out of
you
that stuff.
and you know what the problem with dieting is everybody wants to use it for pleasure. And when I
Yeah.
went to Cuba and I trained with those guys, that's when I got on the rice and protein diet. Because literally every single day we ate rice and a protein. Usually it was beans, sometimes it was pork if we got lucky. And I felt amazing all the time. I was like, dude, like, why do I feel so good? Like we're eating, the guy that some of the guys, they would have, they get, when you're in Cuba, you get, at the time that I was there, they got $30 a month. And I was like, dude, like we're living off of $30 a month here and I'm eating great. I feel good. I'm not hungry. I'm training harder than I've ever trained.
Yeah.
Like that's when I realized like this is actually really simple, but not easy because not everyone has the discipline to pass the McDonald's, to not go drink Coca-Colas and all that shit. To me, it's easy because, I have a goal and I got focus and, I don't need pleasure from food.
Well, and you've stacked the evidence over time in your own head. If I forego on those things and I stick to my plan, I stick to my rice and protein, I'm going to feel better. And once you continually stack that, it gets easier and easier to make that decision.
That's a beautiful way to say it. And it's just that delayed gratification that, people just seem to have a real struggle with, right? Have you ever heard of like the marshmallow test? It's like a but
What is that?
so it was a book. So it was in the 50s. They would take these little kids, I think like 5 to 10 years old, and they would give them one marshmallow and they put them in a room by themselves. They give them one marshmallow and they would say, if you eat that marshmallow, you're not getting any more. If you can wait 10 minutes, we'll bring you a bag of marshmallows.
They eat the
20
thing immediately.
minutes or whatever it was. And they studied these kids and, these kids would be like fidgeting and, it was actually, there's a whole book about it. It's interesting, like some of the techniques that they use to try to distract themselves from eating the marshmallow. Well, anyway, come to find out the kids that ate the marshmallow, they tracked these people for their whole lives. It started in the 50s. The study came out, I think in the 90s or the early 2000s. They track these people their whole lives. The ones that used the delayed gratification that was inherited in them had better lives overall, less divorce, more financial success, um, just whatever trackers they use for better lives.
That's
Yep,
crazy.
because
That's awesome.
they're willing to do work and work. I was listening. I'm not gonna take credit for this because I was listening to Jordan Peterson earlier, who I like a lot. But he was talking about work is just inherently doing something else than what you want to do for an investment of something like a job is work, right? You're getting paid. That's the investment. But like you can work in your relationship. You don't say this to your wife right now, even though that's what you want to say, because it'll be better in the future. Like, and so don't eat the marshmallow right now. Do the work for 10 minutes. You get a whole bag of marshmallows.
That's
And just understanding that concept makes life better.
I would like to hear that because I actually completely reframed the way that I think about work and the way that I look at it altogether. Because realistically, everything in life is work. Like literally every single thing. Like if you don't want to do anything in life, like you're gonna have to work, right? You're gonna be on the streets, right? That's work. Like
Yep.
laying on the streets, being homeless, that's work. If you want something good, it's gonna be work. Like life is literally work.
Yeah. And I guess Jordan Peterson was saying the only thing that's not work is just going with your every whim, acting like a 2-year-old, right? Like,
Yeah.
I want this, go do it. Like, and that doesn't, you end up doing, if you do that for too long, you'll be on the streets and you're going to end up working.
Yeah,
Well,
you're just gonna be working there instead, and that's one thing I like to own in my gym and, these different businesses I'm doing. I got stopped even fucking with this whole work-life balance thing. No, I do. Life is work, so I'm just gonna get up and do what I wanna do, and that's go to work, you know? I
Love it.
like, it's fun, so I think, if we learn how to make our work a part of our lives in a fun way. The problem I think is, the we certainly need these people, but the culture of 9 to 5, is the standard for just American life in general, and work becomes this negative connotation. So I just turn it into a positive thing. Like, dude, work is a great thing. Like it's a great, great thing. Like everything about it is awesome. Like I love going to my gym. I love putting in the work. I love, even doing like these podcasts. Like I love doing this stuff. A lot of people consider this work. I'm like, dude, like I'm practicing a skill. I'm getting better at speaking. I'm getting better at communicating with others. It's like, it's freaking good, man. Like, let's, it's just,
You are so good at reframing stuff. I love that. That's such a good, I don't know. It's such a great way to go about life and be able to change your perspective on stuff and then create, it's kind of like the story you're telling yourself. And if you're telling yourself, I think even in any team I've been on that I've seen, you got like two camps of people, and it's the people that are like, yeah, let's go, like excited to practice, excited to go, being grateful to be there versus the camp that's like, "Oh, I got to be here today." And those guys make it 10 times more miserable. It's like you can't stick around that crew. And when you got people like you that are reframing it to like, this is awesome, I'm here because I want to be here. And yeah, days are gonna suck and this is hard, but like it's meaningful. Um, I don't know. Those are people you want to keep around. It keeps you excited, keeps you motivated, and you stay on the course.
yeah. And that's something I think like naturally, like a lot of people look at me from the outside and they naturally see like an angry person. Like I kind of have a male bitch face type look. I probably smile as much as I should and everything. Um, but yeah, I do think like I'm naturally like a very negative, skeptical, pessimistic person. So taking the time to um, take things in life and learn how to break them down and reframe them in positive ways has done a lot of really good things for me, particularly in business. Is
Yeah.
I mean, fighting as hard as it is, like it's something like it's so much fun and there's like so much reward from it. Like even if you go, to a local show, like there's so much reward, even if you're getting paid like $500, like, there's so much reward. Just like you're probably getting laid that night, like you're like, you're gonna get pumped up by
Yeah.
your friends and family. Like there's so much reward to it. Whereas business, like there's no reward for a long time. Like Like I've been building my gym for 6 years and we're just now where I'm starting to like see true reward out of it. So you're doing this in what feels like an eternal grind of constant stress and pushback and everybody questioning you and you know business isn't one of those things where all your friends are like, "Hey, bro, great job." Like, "You're gonna do awesome, man. Keep it going, buddy." And I'm not the guy that's gonna go call a therapist or some shit either. So you go through this constant, uh, potential negativity, not knowing if you're gonna get anything out of it.
Yeah.
Percent of them fail, right? Or something like that.
Yep.
I don't know the actual number, but, you know
No, it's like probably even more than that.
yeah, yeah, most of them fail, right? So you're like, "How am I gonna beat that?" So you have to have and that's one of the things when I look at, successful people, whether it's in wrestling, combat sports, any athletics, business, the people that I've been around, one of the first things that I've noticed, is a commonality amongst all is, eternal optimism. Like I particularly notice this with realtors, even though it's like kind of an annoying optimism.
Yeah.
But I hang around a lot of them because I do, house flips on the side, and I notice
Cool.
these guys are always optimistic, and the most successful ones are even more optimistic,
And I think
right?
one thing that you do really well is you're optimistic, but you're not just saying it. You're like talking the talk and walking the walk,
Yeah, I peel it
which
back.
that's hugely important.
I like to, analyze it, peel it back, and say, "Okay, why should I be optimistic here?" Right? There's gotta be a reason. I can't justify just, blind optimism, right? I have to actually think about it and, you know, maybe read some Jordan Peterson or some, stoicism or whatever, 'Cause but there's always there has to be a reason, and that's where, I have to sometimes define things properly. Sometimes you have to reframe things, whatever it is, but, you gotta get under the sheets and figure it out.
Absolutely. And are you doing coffee too? Did I see that you got Immortal Coffee?
Yeah, I have a coffee business, yeah.
That's sweet. So you're juggling a lot of different things now. How do you split up your time, between a gym, building this business, coffee? I'm sure you're flipping houses on the side. How are you spending time between different businesses with I mean, you got obviously you know how to grind, but what do what's your day-to-day look like now?
Man, excuse me. If I've learned one thing about business, it's all about the team, right?
Mm.
I can't do shit by myself. If I have good people around me, and I can just help guide them and bring them some optimism, then, it actually becomes fairly easy. It's never easy, right? Because there's always going to be problems, but, um, it makes it fun too, right? When you got great people around you that know what they're doing and they're teaching you things, even though you're the leader, right? You're the head guy, but they're teaching you. Like, what a beautiful thing, man. And you just get the right people
100%.
involved. That's all it is, man.
It's a lot of wisdom right there. Final question, Matt. You just retired, retired from fighting.
Which
Didn't retire. You did got like 9 other businesses on the side. So, um, but what in fighting and just in life in general, what do you want your legacy
to be honest, I don't really give a shit.
I love that.
That's a great answer.
Yeah, people talk about that. I've had that question a million times. Keeping it real. I'm a little bit nihilistic on that, and that's something. When we talk about these deep dives, about definitions and shit. That's one of those things I guess I'm kind of diving into now is like my spirituality because, and maybe I will care more about my legacy in the future. But you know, to me, like we're just on this, we're just a piece of dust in this universe on this rock flying around the sun, and in a few thousand years, like we're going to be the ancient Americans. The fact is, look, I'm gonna be dead in, say 40, 50 years. There's gonna be people that miss my funeral because I got a dinner date. Like what we're doing doesn't mean a damn thing. I'm gonna be forgotten the week after I die. They'll say some amazing stuff about me at my funeral, and then it's all gonna be forgotten, and again, it's a little bit nihilistic, and I'm kind of actually, you know, since we're getting kind of deep into shit here, that's something I'm kind of digging deep into myself, because this isn't necessarily like the most positive way to live your life, right? But this goes back to the accepting thing, where I'm just kind of accepting like this is what it is. Um, so that's something, maybe I'll find God or something. I don't know.
I love that.
Well,
Maybe I'll find
I'm
God or
gonna
something.
I'm gonna make the joke that your nickname's not very appropriate then.
Well, yeah, that's a good one actually. So
But, well, I'll give you a legacy. I'll tell you what I'll remember about Matt when Matt's dead. If I outlive you, is just how tough you were. And, I think that's kinda, if I could, surmise Matt in one word, it'd be toughness.
I appreciate that, man. It means a lot to me, for real. I mean, and you know what? Even if you were to ask me that question again, I might even re-answer it as, look, I'll let others define it. So I don't feel like I'm in a place to define it. Maybe that's why I said that I don't give a shit, because I don't feel like I should be defining that anyway.
Just let the body of work do the speaking.
Absolutely. I'm a man of action, not of words.
I love it. Matt, thanks for coming on, man. I really appreciate you coming. We had a blast, and I think you have so much wisdom in there, and you really think deeply about stuff. It's been awesome kind of getting to know you more. And I mean, everybody sees you as this, tough guy that's out there, fighting, knocking dudes' heads off. And there's a lot to you. And I think it's been really cool to get to know you better. And I appreciate, your perspective on all this. Definitely enjoyed learning more about you, and super, super pumped that you were able to come on. And so thank you, and we'll definitely have to catch up sometime in the future.
Absolutely. I appreciate it, guys, man. Good time.
Thank you.
Yeah, great catching up.